How's everyone doing? So, Strength Chat episode 59, and today I have got a very special guest for you. Today I am joined by strength coach, writer, and athlete, Meghan Callaway. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm very well, thank you. What have you been up to? What have you been working on recently?
So I'm in the process of writing and finishing a landmine program. So a full body training program that I'm going to probably be releasing in June.
Okay.
I have a product coming out this coming Tuesday with me and 8 other people. It's a webinar series and it's NSCA approved. I'm going to be talking about pull-ups, but we're covering a wide range of topics.
Okay.
So that's something I've been working on. I mean, I've been filming a lot of different videos. I've still been really focusing on the pull-up program.
Yeah.
I've kind of just been focusing on a lot of personal stuff. I mean, that's not related to work. So I've had a lot of different things going on.
Enough to keep you out of trouble and keep you busy then.
Exactly.
Interesting you say about the working on the landmine. I think that's a piece of kit that sometimes isn't really used as much, but has quite a lot of benefit for, quite a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you don't even necessarily need a landmine attachment to do most of the exercises. So that's one thing. People assume you must use a landmine attachment.
Yeah.
I don't have access to one. I mean, I never use them.
Okay.
But landmine exercises, they can be fantastic because they kind of mimic a lot of more technically advanced movements. So, I mean, a lot of the different Olympic lifts, you can kind of do different variations, but with the landmine, deadlifts, squatting, you can kind of replicate a lot of the different movement patterns. You can use a lot of resistance, but these exercises are often less technically demanding. They can be lower risk. Or say somebody does have the goal to do Olympic lifting, regular squats or deadlifts with the barbell, landmines can be a very good way to train so you're ready to do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I know the gym that I work at, we actually found the landmine attachments quite a long time into when the gym was opened. At one point, we just used to stick it into the corner of a room. Just use it like that. But when you were mentioning there about the Olympic lifts, there's a broader range that you can use for the landmines, because I think usually people just use them for, landmine presses or you've mentioned about squats there as well. I found it quite a good tool to help with, because a lot of people struggle sometimes with single leg deadlifts. And I've seen on your Instagram, you've been posting quite a lot of exercises to help with that. I found landmines to help with just teaching that movement for a single leg deadlift. Yeah.
And even a couple of other benefits that I didn't mention. If somebody's dealing with an injury, of course, it depends on the nature of the injury. Mm-hmm. People can often, they might not be able to do certain lifts with the barbell, but they're able to do the movements doing the landmine variations. Or another thing, a lot of people have a hard time performing overhead pressing movements. I mean, for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. A lot of the different landmine exercises, they really mimic that movement, but they're friendlier on the shoulders. And of course, they're less technically demanding. So you obtain similar benefits without necessarily having to perform the overhead presses.
Yeah, I know I compete in powerlifting myself. And the landmine overhead press is a lot more comfortable on my shoulders compared to just doing a normal overhead press. So I use that a lot for the lifters and sort of strength athletes that I coach. To look not all that benching sort of beats up your joints a little bit.
See, it's funny. That's one of the lifts I never really got into. I mean, I like bench pressing, but I just never really did it. And I prefer doing a lot of body weight stuff. I do a lot of stuff with dumbbells, at least in terms of bench pressing movements.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I just never really got into, and I don't even know why.
Yeah, I must admit, before I sort of gravitated towards doing a lot more powerlifting, bench press. I'm the powerlifter that doesn't like bench press. It's not my favorite lift. I'd much rather focus on which I have done on my squat and my deadlift. But bench press, it always seems to be that, when that old adage of walking into the gym and people saying, "Oh, so how much do you bench press?" I'm always thinking, "Oh, well, how does my squat and my deadlift weigh up?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it just, yeah, from having okay shoulder mobility, I thought the more I've bench pressed, the more my shoulders don't really like it, and then the more spending on that in helping improve that movement. So, for anyone who I've followed your content that you put out there, and obviously used the ultimate pull-up program that you mentioned there. For anyone who doesn't necessarily know your background and how you got to publish the program and get involved in the coaching that you do, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
Yeah. So I've been a strength coach for over 15 years. The majority of the time I was coaching in person. The last couple of years I've branched out. I've been doing a lot more work online. In October 2017, that's when I originally released the Ultimate Pull-Up Program. Prior to that, I mean, I was thinking about doing something like that, but because I hadn't really done much work online and I didn't really have much of a presence, I was kind of hesitant. And one of my good friends, my friend Lee, I was going to originally just put it out as an ebook and not really do much with it. Mm-hmm. So she was like, no, you have to do more with this. So she kind of helped me formulate a plan of attack. The program, as I was working on it, it just kept growing and growing, and it grew to about 200 pages in length.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it's obviously very comprehensive. I had the first launch. It was extremely successful. The momentum never died down after the first launch. I ended up upgrading the program. So I added in a few new exercises. I added in a 40-page bonus section where I talk about elbow health, shoulder health, stuff for grip strength, and I give a very basic lesson on breathing and bracing. Mm-hmm. And so that I ended up relaunching the program. I mean, it never went off the market. It was always available. Yeah. But I relaunched it October 2018, and it shocked me how well the relaunch did.
Yeah.
It ended up doing just as well as the original launch. And I mean, again, the momentum is still very high, and people seem to be really excited about pull-ups. I mean, it seems to be an exercise that makes people feel really empowered. It brings out a lot of joy, a lot of play. And I think that's a large reason why so many people are passionate about pull-ups.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when I think sometimes people get hung up a lot on they want to lose X amount of body fat or they want to put X amount of muscle on. But when you ask them, but what do you want to do in the gym? I think focusing on a performance goal, all the other things will fall into place just by having consistency of training. And the thing, for men and women, they'll come in and say, I want to be able to do a pull-up, or I want to be able to do more pull-ups. Using me as an example, pull-ups is always one of those things that I've struggled with. I've actually used some of the exercises that you put in there. My pull-ups, okay, I'm never, as a heavier chap, if you like, I'm never gonna bust out loads and loads of pull-ups, but it's definitely improved and has definitely felt a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
For actually putting the program together, obviously you mentioned there about jotting ideas down and making it as up to 200 pages. What was the thought process before that? Was it always something that you wanted to try and put out there? As pull-ups always being sort of like an area that you felt would benefit people to improve on?
Yeah. I mean, I've always, when it comes to my own training, I have always been a huge fan of feeling like I'm playing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, while I do a lot of the different kind of staple movements, and I mean, pull-ups are a staple movement, I always love to experiment. I always love to feel like I'm playing, and I love to have fun. So years and years ago, I mean, I could do pull-ups, but I couldn't do them. I mean, I think I could maybe do 5 reps, but my form was not the greatest. I had a lot of different things I needed to work on. And then shortly after that, I ended up getting in a car accident. And for 5 years, I had a lot of crazy symptoms. Nobody could tell me what was going on. So I was not able to train properly for those 5 years. I never thought I would feel normal again. I felt like an imposter with my coaching. So my pull-up goal kind of was put on hold. But once I finally found somebody who could tell me what was going on and I was able to regain my health and my fitness, I decided I wanted to become proficient at doing pull-ups, but also teaching them.
Okay.
So it was something I've been thinking about for quite some time. In terms of the program, I knew what I wanted to do, like in terms of the kind of more basic exercises. But then the more and more I learned, and I mean, the more and more I did them myself, I realized pull-ups are an extremely technically demanding full body movement. So a lot of the time when you see people put out programs or tips, they focus purely on the upper body. They disregard what's going on in the lumbopelvic region. I mean, even the muscles that control the movement of the shoulders and shoulder blades. They don't focus on grip strength. And while this plays the smallest role, as far as I'm concerned with pull-ups, I do include lower body movements in the program, because if you're able to keep your lower half in a pretty stable, fixed position, you're going to be much less prone to swinging. You're going to be much less prone to moving dead weight. It's going to make your path to the bar shorter and more efficient. So it will make performing one or many reps a lot easier. So I kind of just kept adding different layers to the program as I was writing it. And that's why it kept growing and growing.
Yeah, it was interesting actually from reading the first start of the pull-up program. You do mention about, you know, it's not just upper body strength. So what was the reasoning behind? Because I know in there's split squats and quite a lot of single, or there are a few single leg exercises in there. So what was your reasoning behind through the different phases, not just the upper body exercises, which I'm sure we'll chat about, but what was your reasoning behind the lower body exercises? Because, you know, like you've mentioned there, it isn't just you know how much strength you've got in your arms. You know, you've got to keep your core still. You've got to be able to keep your hips from tilting. What was your reasoning behind choosing the lower body exercises?
So I did add some in, not a ton, but I mean enough to make a difference. So when I coach pull-ups, my preference is for the legs to be fully extended. So obviously, like, you're extending the knees. I encourage you to engage your quads when the knees are fully extended, and the glutes. This is going to do what I talked about. It's going to make your lower half, it's going to help you keep it in a more fixed position, going to make you much less prone to swinging and pulling the dead weight. Yeah. So I included those exercises, like, for example, the split squats. I have a goblet squat. Those are going to get the quads and the glutes. But for people who don't have the option of fully extending their legs, for example, a lot of the home pull-up bars, they're attached like in a doorway. So a lot of the time, especially if you're taller, you can't fully extend your knees. You're going to want to keep your knees bent. In that case, I encourage, because the knees are bent, I want you to engage your hamstrings and glutes. So I do give some exercises I do give 2 different deadlift variations, but then all the lower body exercises do get the glutes. And that is going to help with the lumbopelvic stability that I talk about a lot.
Yeah. So with those, if someone is adding that program, the pull-up program, in alongside other training, would you recommend that they still do the lower body exercises that they're already doing, or switch them up to the exercises that you've prescribed, or does it work the same method?
Well, I mean, it depends on the person, what their main goal is, what type of training they're doing. And I do have a lot of power lifters who are following my program. I have people who do CrossFit. I have people who play other sports. So whatever their main goal is, I encourage them to focus on that first. So for example, say somebody's a power lifter. I don't know how they'll plan their program or their training, but say they might focus on one of the big 3 lifts, like maybe, I don't know how you plan your program, but maybe on one day you'll focus on bench. Another day it's going to be deadlifting. Another day it's going to be squatting. So what I would encourage you to do would be to do your big lift first and then follow it up with my program after, if that's what you want to do. For other people, I mean, if they're not power lifters, if their main goal is doing pull-ups, I recommend doing my program first, and then they can add in more after. But what they add in, I don't want it to take away from the integrity of my program. So for example, like if they want to focus on deadlifting, other exercises that are taxing on the grip, I would recommend doing that after they've done exercises in my program that require a lot of grip strength. So if you want to focus on pull-ups, doing a lot of deadlifts before is probably not going to be the best idea, just because it's really going to tax your grip.
Yeah, I think that's quite reassuring for me after using some of the exercises. It's a great point that you said. You know, as you know, from a powerlifting background myself, use them as accessory exercises, because going into the the upper body exercises, not all the exercises, because there is a thing that, you know, sometimes people who want to get better at pull-ups will just come in and just do more pull-ups, you know, and try and do as many as they can, and then I only got 4 today. Right, tomorrow let's try and come in and I'll try and do 5. When you spoke about the different phases and what's involved within the pull-ups.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, you go ahead. I totally interrupted you.
I was just going to say that some of the exercises that you put in there are, you've got pull-up holds, you've got band exercises where you're raising your arms above your head or sliding against the wall. You know, how much benefit do those exercises have, and why do you think sometimes people underestimate the use of those exercises that you put in there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I talked about how the pull-up is an extremely technically demanding, it's a full body movement. So with my program, the different areas that I cover, obviously the different pull-up specific movements, and in each phase, it will become progressively tougher. I include exercises that improve shoulder and scapular control mobility. What I mean by that is kind of a different term for stability, where the parts are moving and you need to be able to control that movement. Mm-hmm. So I have exercises like that you just referred to. I have exercises that help improve grip strength. I have a lot of different exercises that help improve lumbopelvic stability. So being able to keep your hips and spine in a relatively fixed position. Yeah. And I mean, people might think of those as core exercises. Yeah. So essentially that's what it is. I have the lower body exercises that you mentioned. In the upgraded program, in the bonus section, I do include certain exercises that help address shoulder health. I have elbow health exercises and additional exercises for grip strength. Yeah. Oh, and of course, I have exercises for upper body strength. Yeah. And the main focus is on horizontal rowing movements, horizontal pulling movements, but I do include certain pushing movements. But the reason I do this is because a lot of these movements that I include, they really help improve lumbopelvic stability. Yeah. So I do have a couple different landmine variations. I have push-ups and several other exercises. Yeah. So it kind of just reinforces the importance of lumbopelvic stability, which again is going to help you maintain proper body positioning. Mm-hmm. So they all these different categories will play a role in your ability to excel at pull-ups.
Yeah, and as well, you know, when you mention in there, you've got quite a lot of pulling movements in there. Actually, when you look at how people in society are now, you know, a lot of people are sitting down a lot more now, and you know, either hunched over when they're driving or when they're sat at a desk. So actually, an actual sort of being a human point of view, if you like, the amount of rowing that's in there, and looking at that hip stability, that improves anything, not just, you know, when you're looking to do pull-ups or anything like that, because, you know, if you can get out of that internal rotation on your shoulders and strengthen up that back, it can improve your shoulder health. Go on, sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say, so many people, they focus on pushing movements or they focus on vertical pulling. They don't do a lot of horizontal pulling movements. So, I mean, it's not even just important for training for pull-ups. It's important for feeling good. It's important for your performance during like daily tasks, possibly sport-specific stuff. Yeah. So I just find horizontal or pulling movements, they're highly overlooked, but they're extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you mentioned there about exercise to help with upper body strength and core stability, obviously your program, it says on the front from beginners to more experienced trainers. A lot of people sometimes when they come in, I'm not strong enough. I'll never be able to do that. Would you recommend that people would work on building that base of strength, or for some of the exercises that you put into the program, that is, that they can give it a go and in some form be able to do a variation or a regressed version of the program?
Yes. I mean, because it's 4 phases long, it does cater to most people. During my first launch, I received a couple of emails from people who bought my program who were having an issue doing the regular concentric hang. So this is where you're just in the top position of the pull-up. You're going to set yourself up so you're already very close to the bar. So you might be on a box, bench, something like that. You're just going to jump up, and then you're going to get into that top position and you're going to hold. So I did receive probably about 3 or 4 emails from a few people who were not quite able to do that. So what I ended up doing, I ended up just making a post on Facebook, but in the new program, I added in the modification where you can do the similar movement, but rather than being in the vertical, so free hanging position, you can use a TRX, you can put a barbell on a squat rack, you can use a Smith machine, and your feet are going to be on the floor and you're in more of a diagonal position versus that vertical free hang position.
Yeah.
So that was one modification. While I talked about it in my original program, I ended up in the upgraded version putting in a video of hands elevated push-ups for people who might not be ready to do push-ups from the ground.
Yeah.
So, I mean, most of the exercises in the program can be modified so they're suitable for most people.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I did. And because, I mean, again, each phase is 4 to 8 weeks long and I have 4 phases, it does cater to, I mean, not everybody if you're an extreme beginner, but it does cater to most people.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that's what I quite liked about it, because when people do come into the gym, you know, like I mentioned before about focusing on a performance goal, everyone has their own starting point, and you know, it doesn't matter just because it's written down. Okay, you've got to do the concentric hang. There are variations of that, you know, which you can make it easier and then progress. You know, it's not something that's going to take. That's going to happen overnight. Strength is a skill. You know, you're learning how to get better at it, and the more you do, you know, then you can start seeing a little bit more start seeing more progress. Sorry. So for people actually coming in and wanting to get started, would there be any ever reason that you would recommend people not doing that program? Because obviously you mentioned about shoulder health and that sort of stuff.
I mean, if somebody is obviously dealing with an injury, whether or not it's elbow, shoulder, back, I mean, again, I would recommend that they receive clearance from a credible physician before they take part in my program.
Yeah.
And I had one person, he bought my program. He was close to 70 years old. I don't know his exact age. So prior to even using my program, he was dealing with a lot of different issues in his hands and fingers. And it sounded like it was a nerve-related issue. So he got my program, he tried it, and he said that he was just dealing with severe issues in his hands. And so he asked if he could get a refund. So I said, well, yeah, of course I'll give you a refund. What about, because he was very new to the training, I said, what about kind of modifying certain things, giving it a month, see how you are. If at the end of a month, or at the end of the month, I should say, you are still not feeling great, I will totally give you a refund. And so he was really nice. We talked back and forth. And even before the month was up, he just said he didn't want to ask for a refund. He was totally going to do everything. But in the grand scheme of things, I mean, he probably should not have done the program in the first place, just because he obviously had an injury prior to starting the program.
Yeah.
So at the end of the month, he was still dealing with the numbness and the nerve pain in his fingers. So I just said, I mean, I gave him a refund, and I said he should really get clearance from somebody before he kind of resumes my program or something else.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. I mean, obviously it's kind of a common sense thing. If you have an injury and certain movements bother you, it's definitely best to let those areas heal, but also to get a legitimate diagnosis from somebody credible. Yeah. And this applies to any kind of training, not just my program.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the key phrase there is that picked out was common sense. I think sometimes, you know, why I ask the question is sometimes people will dive into things knowing that they've got, you know, like I just mentioned there at the start about, you know, I'll use landmine presses for overhead press as opposed to a standard barbell overhead pressing, just because that irritates my shoulders. I think sometimes people, when it does come to strength training, they want to dive in straight at the deep end and not necessarily do things that are specific to them, or work on their weaknesses, if you like. Much like, you know, when we mentioned about the adding in the rowing exercises to which, you know, a lot of people want to do a lot of pressing, but never necessarily do a lot of rowing. So
Yeah.
where do you sometimes, obviously we touched on it a little bit about, you know, people just walking into the gym and wanting to do, right, I want to do as many pull-ups as I can in today and then see if I can beat it tomorrow. Where do you think sometimes people go wrong when it comes to being able to get better at pull-ups or get stronger with bodyweight exercises?
Well, with pull-ups, so much of being able to do them is about using proper form. So a lot of people, I mean, they might be really strong, they might be elite athletes, and they rely on brute strength alone. And a lot of the time they just overuse their arms and they don't use the muscles in their back. They don't initiate the movement with the shoulder blades. So they're going to find it a lot tougher. I have a lot of people, the second we worked on improving their form, and I mean, this was even within a session or two, obviously their strength is not going to dramatically improve in a session or two, but because we really hammered away on improving their form, right away it became easier for them, whether or not they went from being able to do none to a couple, or even just improving their form on the number of reps they were able to do. Yeah. Form, for me, I mean, it makes such a difference, and it is probably the most overlooked thing. People just automatically assume they need to improve their upper body strength, and they might even, like lat pull downs, for example. They do a lot of exercises that aren't necessarily specific enough to the pull-up, so the carryover is very minimal. Yeah. So I recommend really focusing on the form, working on the different pull-up specific regressions that I mentioned. The horizontal rowing movements are extremely important. Improving lumbopelvic stability is crucial because, I mean, you'll see so many people when they're doing pull-ups, you'll see them swing. You'll see them even before they initiate the rep or when they go to initiate the rep. You'll see their rib cage totally flare. You'll see their lower back hyperextend. And it makes it so much tougher to be able to execute one or many reps when you're lacking the stability in the lumbopelvic region. Yeah. Yeah. So those are my, and then the last one, grip strength. So kind of my big four: form, upper body strength, lumbopelvic stability, and grip strength. Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, form is key. Oh, there you are. Is key for everything. If you, when it comes to, you know, like we mentioned about, you know, just everything just flailing around when people are doing pull-ups. Sometimes if they were to, you know, record themselves and look at how they were doing pull-ups, and then if they did the same thing with, I don't know, maybe a barbell deadlift or a barbell squat, they wouldn't let themselves make that form look so bad on those exercises. So it's not necessarily, you know, so why would you do it on a bodyweight exercises when form is just as important for those, so that you don't injure yourself or you know, hurt your elbows or hurt your shoulders when you're doing pull-ups. Yeah. So when we're chatting there about bodyweight exercises and pull-ups, why do you think? Because you've posted the content that you've posted out there, you know, various different bodyweight exercises. Why do you think bodyweight exercise is so important? Why do you think they should be still included in people's programs? Not necessarily, you know, as a powerlifter, because their goal is to you know, lift maximal weight on the squat, bench, and deadlift. But, you know, for people to get stronger, why are bodyweight exercises important to be kept in their programs? I think they're extremely important because they teach you how to be able to control the movement in your body. So for example, I mean, pull-ups, you're having to control the movement of the shoulders and shoulder blades. You're really having to stabilize around the hips and the spine. All of these components will have a carryover to exercises you do with weight, whether or not it's dumbbell, barbell, kettlebells. And you'll often see the really, really good, like the people who are just amazing at calisthenics, you know, where they post the really crazy cool videos. Yeah. A lot of those people, I mean, I'm not saying all of them, but they'll go and do stuff with the barbell or other weights, and they're already very good at it. Mm-hmm. But yet you see a lot of people who are great with lifts, for example, with the barbell, yet they struggle to be able to perform push-ups or pull-ups. So I find it just like the body weight exercises complement what you do with the barbell or dumbbells. And I mean, of course, the barbells and the dumbbell, that's going to complement the body weight stuff.
Yeah.
But because they're kind of like, the heavier you go, it seems to be more glamorous. So a lot of people do shy away from the body weight stuff when it's just as important, if not, in my opinion, more important.
Yeah. And as well, it's still pretty challenging body weight exercises. I think sometimes people sort of are under the impression that, oh, well, I'm not going to do push-ups. I'm just going to do, like we chatted about bench press at the start.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do bench press instead of push-ups. Whereas actually, sometimes when you see people do push-ups, when we're chatting about form, the back's arching, the chest is dropping sometimes. They're not keeping the core braced. Whereas actually, to do a push-up correctly, it can be quite challenging for people that might be able to bench press quite a lot, but can't perform a push-up.
Yeah, I've worked with clients like that where they could bench press a lot of weight, but the second we went to do push-ups, they struggled largely because they lack the lumbopelvic stability. So you would really see them hinging through their spine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when people do push-ups, you want your body to move as a single unit, not in segments.
Yeah.
And then the people who lack the lumbopelvic stability, you might see them hinge to their lower back. I've had a few who've kind of hinged to their mid back. They're not able to keep their head up. And then like you'll see the neck collapsing all the time. There's so many different breakdowns that could occur. And yet a lot of these people are awesome at benching or doing some of the other lifts, like with heavier weight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found as well, some of the bodyweight exercises, sometimes it's quite nice to, because, as a powerlifter myself, you sometimes do feel beat up from using quite a lot of lifting heavy weights all the time, or being locked in with that barbell. Sometimes using the bodyweight exercises is quite nice. It's a little bit better on your joints.
Yeah. Oh, it completely is.
Yeah. Just on the topic on that. So when we're chatting there about using the example of the pull-ups and the push-ups, a lot of people will say that a lot of bigger guys will turn around and say, I don't want to do body weight. I'm too heavy. I'm too heavy for that sort of stuff. And lighter people, they're better at body weight exercises because they're lighter. Is that a myth, or does everybody have the potential to be able to perform body weight exercises correctly?
I mean, it's both correct and incorrect.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously, if somebody's quite a bit heavier, it's going to make it more challenging. Mm-hmm. But what I find, so many people struggle, not necessarily due to how much they weigh or how tall they are. Like with pull-ups, for example, so much boils down again to form.
Yeah.
So if you're engaging the muscle, like initiating the movement by using the shoulder blades, drawing each one in towards the spine, down towards the opposite hip, versus pulling with the arms, if you're able to keep your hips and spine in a stable position, like a fixed position, it's going to make it so much easier. And I mean, I'm not going to guess how much easier, but it's going to make you feel like you weigh a lot less than if you're just kind of limp dead weight trying to pull yourself to and from the bar. Yeah. And I mean, I've worked with people who were very short and they weighed very little, but they struggled with pull-ups, at least in the beginning, because their form wasn't good. Yeah. And I've worked with other people who were a lot taller and a lot heavier. Second, we corrected their form, and this is even within a single session, they found performing that movement significantly easier. Yeah. So weight does play a role, but form is just as, if not more important.
Yeah, I think that is, I'm quite glad how you worded that, just because, sometimes when you are adding in bodyweight exercises for some people, it's that dread that they just want to use dumbbells or use barbells, but the bodyweight exercises, using the form, the body awareness and being able to control what your body's doing is really important. And like you mentioned, it will help with the barbell lifts. Yeah.
Oh, they're huge. Like the body weight stuff is huge for developing body awareness.
Yeah.
And that's something, I mean, some people, I've always been very lucky. I've always been quite athletic, and my body awareness has always been, I don't want to say exceptional, but it's always been very good.
Yeah.
Other people that I've coached over the years, they've really, really lacked body awareness. And this is a skill. I mean, it's a skill and you need to acquire it.
Yeah.
So body weight exercises, they are really good at helping you improve your body awareness. And of course, because you're just using your body weight, they are often lower risk than when you're using a barbell or dumbbell.
Yeah.
So they're safer as well. I mean, in not all cases, but in many cases.
Yeah. Just on a tangent there, it's not a question that I wrote down. Just picked up on the point you're saying there of you said you've always had quite good body awareness. What do you think?
Yeah.
Why do you think some people lack that body awareness? Because I've had people come into the gym and you coach them the exercise, and it's one of those things that you try different coaching cues, you keep working, and it takes a lot longer to get that movement drilled in. One of the main things is that a hip hinge for
Yes.
sometimes. And yet, one point that you picked up on there, that training for you was play. Does that have a role in how people can move and have body control?
I mean, again, I'm very lucky. This has just always been something that's come naturally to me.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's one of those things. Some people are naturally athletic, or they might have to work a lot harder to be athletic.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing with body awareness. And so much of it is being present mentally. And I mean, I've worked with people and they really kind of struggle to master certain movements. The hip hinge movement is one of the hardest ones, it seems, for a lot of people to learn.
Yeah.
But I mean, you need to be present mentally while you're obviously learning these movements. You can't zone out. You really need to focus on obviously the movement, but kind of what areas you should be feeling.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, they underestimate how important it is to be mentally present, not just physically. Yeah. And like, you have to really think about it.
Yeah. It is that thing of, whatever works best for them to that mental trigger to be okay. So this is how it's supposed to be. I always like to word it as, think of programming a computer. We're basically programming you to do that movement so that it's in your system so that you can basically do that movement and have a better idea of what your body's doing.
Yeah. And even just again over the years, a lot of the people I've worked with who have really struggled with body awareness, they're kind of the people, and this is people of all genders, who were kind of fixated on making themselves as tired as possible, as sore as possible, and they wanted to do things just really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. So rather than kind of taking their time with each rep, they were just rushing because they really wanted to feel tired. Mm-hmm. So with these people, something that I will often do is I make them perform whatever we're doing negative reps. So if, say, we're doing a split squat, rather than using a regular tempo, and this is even just with body weight, I might have them lower in 3 seconds versus 1. Because they're going at a slower speed, it often makes it easier for them to really focus on the proper movement, what areas they should be noticing, and then they can also focus on the different coaching cues I provide.
Yeah.
And so, with body weight, it's obviously easier for certain movements anyway, to do negatives than if you're using a heavier weight.
Yeah.
Or, other people, and I tell them, if you want to take a giant step forward, you sometimes might need to take a step back. Mm-hmm. So people who are starting out with push-ups and they're really struggling, they might be making different errors. I will often modify the exercise. They'll put their hands on a box, bench, other elevated surface, and they'll do the hands elevated variation. Yeah. And this allows them to focus on performing the movement correctly, using the right muscle groups. And again, they're not going to feel as taxed because it is a little bit easier, but it allows them to do it properly. So then we can eventually make it tougher by using a lower surface, eventually going to the floor. And so they might take a step back, and some people have a hard time with this, but it allows them to take a giant step forward. And this is how you will often get to that next place in your training.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, and I think it's a point that sometimes is overlooked. Getting stronger, getting better at exercises. Like we've said before, strength is a skill. It takes a little bit of patience. stripping it back a little bit so that you can, taking one step back to take 3 steps forward. I would rather do that than, that old saying of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is a sign of madness. Why not just take it back a little bit? When you mentioned there about tempos and focusing on the eccentric, that's something that I actually use in the powerlifting club that I run, just because it lets them highlight that, look, for the squat, for example, if they're going 3 or 4 seconds on the way down, they've got to focus on keeping that tension, on keeping good form, rather than trying to go really, really fast and everything going all over the place.
Yeah, exactly, because the movements are complicated. So going at the slower speed, even in your head, if you're having to focus on all the different cues, if you're going at a slower speed, it makes it much easier than if you're trying to remember all these different cues when you're going at a normal, or even some people, they go way too fast, at a faster pace.
Yeah. And when you mentioned there about having the actually feeling the muscles that are worked, as well as using the what you mentioned there about the eccentrics and that sort of stuff. Sometimes people actually, I'll always ask people, so how does that feel? Where are you feeling that? How do you go about coaching that? Because sometimes, when we were saying about people coming in and just smashing out a load of pull-ups without actually focusing on form, how do you go about coaching that? And is there any cues or exercises that you use for making your clients feel the muscle that should be working?
Yeah, so of course it depends where they are in their pull-up journey. Some people might be very far along, others might be almost at the beginner level. So one of my big things, and it pretty much applies to all of the pull-up specific exercises, whether or not it's much more advanced or if it's very beginner, you want to get yourself in the right position. But even before you initiate the rep. So I kind of liken it to a slight hollow body position, just because you're not quite as arched as a regular hollow body. So you want your head, torso, and hips to be in a stacked position. I will often use a canister analogy, so like a barrel.
Yeah.
And so you want to get yourself nice and set. Before you initiate the rep, you want to take that 360-degree breath of air in that I talk about. So you want to imagine that obviously you don't have lungs all around your spine or anything like that, but you want to imagine that you're filling the entire space around your spine and of course in the chest with pressure. Yeah. Then you're going to do the same thing for the bracing. You want to do a 360-degree brace. So you want to brace all around the spine, not just on the front. So if you were to put your hands on your front, sides, and back, you should feel them expand. So I will often do different breathing and bracing drills so people kind of understand that. Yeah. Once they've done that and they're set in the right body position, I get them to initiate the movement by focusing on drawing the shoulder blades in towards the spine, down towards the opposite hip. Where a lot of people go wrong, they don't do that. They just pull with their arms. Yeah. So that's one thing I'll do. And say somebody's doing a regular pull-up, we can apply all of that. Say they're doing a modified concentric hang that I talked about earlier on. Mm-hmm. They can also do that. So you're kind of just reinforcing the same concepts over and over. Yeah. As they become more masterful at that, you can then make the exercise more challenging. So it might be a more challenging pull-up regression. Yeah. And then I liken it kind of like to a staircase to being able to do pull-ups. You master the one. You go up a few stairs. You master the next. You go up a few more stairs. And eventually you're in the top position of the staircase where you're then able to do pull-ups. Yeah. And then you can kind of keep working on everything. Of course, it depends on the individual. Their recovery, their goals. But this is pretty much relevant to most people. Yeah. Yeah, I quite like that analogy of the steps, and it comes back to that point of, like you said there, about mastering pull-ups. It is a skill. Let's work on it. Let's keep practicing it. Keep progressing the exercises. The point that you made about breathing and bracing, we use quite a lot of that in the gym that I work in, and it's actually surprising how many people
don't know how to control their breathing or actually be able to brace.
Yes. Well, one of the biggest things even for bracing, and I've had this happen so many times, but it just happened recently with a client. She was doing a hollow body hold, and she's a client, she's in her 70s. She has the goal of being able to do a pull-up. And I mean, she went from we worked on the other regressions for months. Then I introduced the band, just because I don't like to introduce the band until people have mastered a lot of the other key points.
Yeah.
Just because the band, it does make cheating pretty easy. You can kind of disregard proper body positioning. It gives you that kind of spring in the bottom position. So she was doing a hollow body, and I was observing her midsection, and I could totally see that she was sucking in. Like, her stomach, there was just it's almost like a crevice. So I just said, I'm like, are you sucking in? And she's like, yeah. And so we've been working on this for a while, but sometimes people forget. So I showed her the breathing and the bracing exercise that I kind of described. I said, when you're bracing, you shouldn't see your stomach hollow. Mm-hmm. If anything, you should see that area kind of expand.
Yeah.
So I taught her how to do it properly again. And even after that, we were doing a single arm floor press, which is extremely anti-rotational. If you're not bracing properly, you will see people either fall to the one side or kind of just corkscrew in their torso.
Yeah.
So the second she improved the breathing and the bracing, the single arm floor press, it became dramatically easier. She was able to increase her weight. So people, they don't really seem to understand what proper breathing and bracing is.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they automatically assume that bracing is sucking in or hollowing.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you shouldn't really be doing that in most cases.
Yeah, it's the two main points I took from that. One, if your client's 70 odd years old and wanted to do pull-ups, I think that's cool. I think that's awesome. She was in her 60s, and I think I've mentioned this. I've told this story to quite a few people before. She came in, and her goal was we have a tire in the gym. Her goal was to flip the tire, and when she was able to do that, I think that I just think that's cool. I think it's good that even it doesn't matter what age you are, what ability you are, that you can go out and set those goals. And the second point of what you mentioned there about when you're sucking your tummy in, it's surprising how many people when you're chatting about bracing and taking that breath in, that a lot of people will just suck the tummies in. Yeah.
And I mean, even the client that we were talking about it, and she said for her entire life, she was kind of always told, or not told, but you believe, you don't want your stomach to stick out. You kind of want to suck it in so it looks smaller. And so she would do this all the time throughout the day and for her entire life. So it just became ingrained.
Wow.
And me, I used to joke when I would post photos or I would see photos or videos of myself deadlifting, my stomach, it was just totally pressed out, and I didn't want to share it. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, well, it shows me I'm actually bracing properly. If I was sucking in, that probably would not be a good thing.
Yeah. It's strange how people can go so long thinking that they're doing something right, and just those small little changes that they might have from working with a coach, how much more that can improve improve form, improve technique.
Yeah, I mean, even again with the breathing, people just assume it's getting oxygen in, air in, air out. Yeah. Proper breathing accomplishes so much more than that. And when I tell people, imagine you're breathing into your belly, into your sides, into your back, they look at me like I'm crazy, because of course you don't have lungs down there. Yeah. But it makes such a difference to your training, to the amount of weight you're able to lift, to the amount of stability you're able to generate. Tension, it makes such a difference. So that is one, and I mean, it's a skill. Learning how to breathe is a skill that you need to acquire. It's not just something that usually happens for most people. Yeah,
it is one of those things, when people come in and it's right, today at the start of the session, I'm gonna I like to make a joke out of it. I want to teach you how to breathe. Oh, but I breathe every day. It's but there's always a technique to do it, instead of, because I found that not just helping with exercises as well, but sometimes breathing properly for people who are sometimes quite stressed and hold attention. It's not just in terms of exercise, but in terms of lifestyle as well. Being able
it's huge.
Makes people a little bit more relaxed. I'll add breathing exercises in to people's at the start of the exercises, just so that instead of them coming in and being really stressed and, you know, adding even more stress on by exercising, when they come in, do the breathing, and then they can go into the program without sort of, you know, that risk of causing any more harm because of the stress and the tension that they're under.
Yeah. I mean, I recommend doing breathing exercises every day, not even just for training. I do it to help myself feel calm. Mm-hmm. So it's something I do multiple times throughout the day. When I go for walks, I live in a pretty nice area. I love to walk along the ocean, and I'll walk and I'll breathe. And I mean, I just really feel calm when I do that. So of course, the breathing that you do then is going to be different than the breathing during training.
Yeah.
But it helps calm you. It helps decrease sympathetic nervous system activity. And I mean, in a lot of people, that is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the main thing about, or the thing that keeps coming up about training is that to get the results that you want, whether that be performance or, you know, like I mentioned at the start about losing X amount of fat or gaining X amount of muscle, that it's everything else. Sometimes everything that happens outside of the gym, so sleep, stress levels, and, you know, breathing can have an impact on that.
Huge. I mean, people think, like, they wonder why they're often not seeing optimal results. You have to ask, well, how's your sleep? How's your nutrition? Mm-hmm. How is your stress? And I mean, those play a huge role. Yeah. I mean, that's even more important than what you're doing in the gym.
Yeah. I know obviously we mentioned about, you know, there's a lot more, you know, going back to the topic of pull-ups. There's a lot more to pull-ups than, you know, just coming in and you know, pulling yourself up. But, you know, you've got to think of the bigger picture and what's affecting that. You know, the training side of things. Yes, you know, there are coaching cues and there's a skill to learn, but that's really that's the easy part. You know, I would say the bigger picture outside of it, because, you know, as coaches we can help people progress with the exercises and correct the form. But like you say, if they aren't sleeping well, if they aren't getting enough good food in, then, you know, it's always going to be an uphill battle.
Yes.
So going back to the training side of things, obviously you mentioned there about you yourself use quite a lot of bodyweight exercises, but still have the dumbbells and the barbells involved. Can people go too far one way of doing just bodyweight exercises, and, you know, the other end of the spectrum, people just doing the barbells and the dumbbells? Is there a good balance in between? What do you recommend?
I mean, it depends on the person. It depends on their goals. It depends on their experience. It depends on so many factors, whether or not they possibly have an injury, like a prior injury, current injury. Yeah. My preference, I mean, this is just what I like to do and what I do with a lot of my clients, but of course it does depend on the person. I do a mix. For my lower body, I do tend to use a lot more resistance, so stuff with barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells. For my upper body, I do a lot more body weight stuff, but I still do a lot of stuff. I mean, I do a lot of stuff with barbells, dumbbells. I've been doing more and more landmine exercises.
Yeah.
I do a lot of different core exercises, but I mean, again, a lot of the exercise, pretty much any exercise you do correctly could be considered a core exercise.
Yeah, that's do you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. I was actually talking about that in a session today, that, you know, that you should be feeling this in your core. I think it was any single arm or single leg exercise. Single leg exercise is a sneaky core exercise. You know, about push-ups as well. You should be feeling that in your core as well. So
yeah,
actually, that's a good point. That just it's again a thing that I think people underestimate, and how important their core, you know, as well as the breathing, but, you know, their core plays a big role in exercises.
Yeah, I find, I mean, if you're stable around the hips and the spine, it kind of allows you to focus on the area that might be the prime, like or the area that you should be focusing on. So for example, technically the push-up is an upper body movement, but if you're able to remain stable around the hips and the spine, it makes executing this movement significantly easier. So it allows you to really focus on your upper body. Say you're doing single leg deadlifts, because that was the feature for this week that I did. If, again, you're able to keep your body facing straight ahead. So obviously when you're standing up, it should be facing straight ahead. When you go to hinge your hips back, your torso, like your stomach, should be facing the floor. If you're able to control the movement around your hips and your spine, it's going to make executing the single leg hinge much easier. So it plays a role. And one other thing I meant to add in earlier, if you're kind of a beginner, I am more of a fan of doing the body weight movements. You need to learn how to master the movement before you add in the resistance. So if you're kind of learning, I find that is a lot more important. And I do recommend doing more body weight movements, becoming proficient at the movement before you add in before you add in a lot of extra weight.
I'm really glad you said that, to be honest, because in at the gym that I work in, I do the majority of the sort of the strength and the muscle building programs. And I will start off people with, a lot of people will say, oh, well, you compete in powerlifting, so I just want to come in and lift all the barbells. And it's like, if it's like, we can build up to a back squat, but if you struggle doing a body weight squat, I ain't gonna load a barbell on your back.
Exactly.
You're not gonna do a bench press if you can't do a standard push up. It's because even if I think what a lot of people want to start, what's that saying? Start running before they can walk, or whatever the saying is.
Yes.
Just because it's training a bad pattern if you start adding load. And I think sometimes, like we touched on earlier in the chat, of just be patient. Think about, like, the great analogy that you said of think about going up those steps. Step one, right? Let's work on this, then master that, and then we can go to the next level.
Yeah. And even this goes way back into the show, and I kind of thought about it after the fact. And I mean, this is relevant to what we're talking about now. So much of training, what you should do, boils down to common sense. So even, again, going back to my pull-up program, I talked about the guy who bought it and he was injured. And I mean, he probably shouldn't have bought it. And I mean, I didn't know. If he'd messaged me prior to having purchased the program, I would have said probably hold off buying it for now. So I mean, even before this past launch and the first launch, I did receive a few emails from people who were dealing with some pretty significant injuries, and they asked if I thought my program was going to be right for them. So I said, right now, no, I don't recommend following it. Kind of obviously get a legitimate diagnosis from somebody credible, and then maybe in the future. So now what we're talking about, if you're injured, if you have certain things going on, if something hurts, and I mean, I'm talking not normal discomfort, I'm talking bad pain or bad discomfort, you want to avoid it. And so you kind of need to focus on the movements that you're able to do. Say a more advanced movement, for example, like a barbell squat or deadlift, does not feel good for you. You might need to take a step back. Can you perform a body weight squat or hip hinge properly? If you can, great. Can you do landmine deadlifts? Can you do goblet squats? So, I mean, again, the staircase, you kind of find that suitable variation for you, master that variation, then you might be able to go up the staircase a little bit more, do something slightly more advanced. So you don't want to start out like so like beginner level or even intermediate, and then suddenly jump all the way to Z and attempt to do barbell deadlifts or barbell squats long before you're ready.
It's a good point. It's a good point on there. It's got to get the first things done first, and then you can progress.
And it's not even just a matter of safety. I mean, safety is of course the main thing for a lot of people. And even I received a message from somebody who bought my program. It was a couple of months, or maybe about 4 months ago. And she wrote me a really nice message. She said the program's amazing, but she was just feeling so discouraged. And she felt like she was the one like in the 1% of the population who would never be able to do a pull-up. And so I asked her, I'm like, well, where did you start? Like, what phase did you start in? What are you doing now? So she said she started in phase 1. And remember, I said each phase is 4 to 8 weeks in length, and I have 4 phases.
Mm-hmm.
So she said she did phase 1 for 2 weeks, and she jumped all the way to phase 4 and decided to try. Yeah, exactly. And she just tried to do a pull-up, couldn't do it. So she was so discouraged, and she thought it was her, that she was hopeless. So once she told me this and how she kind of basically skipped from A to Z, I just said, I mean, I reiterated each phase is 4 to 8 weeks in length. Focus on mastering all the different movements in each phase. You will get there. It's just a matter of being patient and putting in both the mental and physical work. Yeah. So she was so relieved. I mean, she was so happy. She thought it was her. And I said, it has nothing to do with you. It's just the way you're training. Yeah. So people, I guess people are impatient. They want to do maybe the most advanced thing too soon. They struggle to do it. They might get injured or it just doesn't feel good. Then they get discouraged. So being patient, of course, it's important for safety, but it's also important for confidence and empowerment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, not just stepping away from a client's point of view, if you like, and looking at it from a coach's point of view. That's, you know, managing their expectations and not saying, oh, so there's 4 phases in this program, but yeah, we'll be able to get you doing pull-ups in 2 weeks. You know,
exactly.
That's giving them false hope. And then if they, you know, like obviously that woman was reassured, but if she, if you just said, oh no, do it for another 2 weeks and you'll be okay, just knocks the confidence and they might stop training altogether. Going back to the injury point, you know, I think sometimes people or coaches can sometimes go into areas that they're not 100% sure of. If someone is injured, there's nothing wrong with saying, I think maybe you should go see, you know, a physio or, you know, or someone who's a little bit more qualified in that area to fix that injury, because,
I mean, that's not even, like, that is something like that should be required. And so many people, they go well outside of their scope of practice. Yeah. And so me, for example, say I have somebody I'm working with them, they come to me and they're injured. And like I require, I mean, obviously they have to fill out a waiver and all that sort of thing, but I require that they get a diagnosis from somebody credible before they work with me. Yeah. So for one, I know whether or not they're a suitable client, whether or not I'll be able to help them. And of course, if I know what is going on, and of course they get clearance from the physio or other credible practitioner, it'll just work so much better both for me and for them. Yeah. So I find that's really important. Or another thing that people do is, I mean, I don't consider myself totally proficient, for example, at teaching kettlebell exercises. So if somebody were to come to me and that was their goal, I would say, well, I mean, I feel like I'm competent in that area, but it's not my specialty. So I would refer them to somebody else who is even more proficient at it. Yeah. So I think as a coach, that is your duty. But a lot of people don't, of course, because they think, oh, I'm going to lose money if I turn away this person. But if anything, it just makes you more credible. And then you will work with people, I mean, whom you can actually help. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's one of the reasons why I asked you to be a guest on the podcast. A couple of people have come to me, asked for programming for pull-ups. You know, in a barbell and dumbbell background, you know, I can get them, you know, get weight increased on the bar. But you know, I work with a guy that runs a calisthenics club. Saw your program, obviously, you know, expert in your field. You know, you've had great success with the pull-up program. So why not say, okay, so you know, this is a program that I'm going to add in to help you do pull-ups. I didn't, you know, don't turn around and say, yep, I'm a calisthenics specialist. I can do it like that. Just because, you know, if I hadn't followed the guidelines that you put in place, you know, I could have been saying, 2 weeks you'll be doing pull-ups rather than.
Yeah, see, that would be like me with bench press. If somebody wanted to work on bench pressing for powerlifting, I'd be like, okay, this is definitely not my area of expertise. And I would find somebody much more suitable for them. Yeah. So absolutely. I think as coaches, that's our duty. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it is a thing that sometimes concentrate on the things that you're good at, and don't be frightened to look at other people that are specialists in areas.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think that was quite a nice way to finish on, really. I think what started out chatting more about pull-ups, there was quite a few tangents that we went on there, which was pretty good.
I love the tangents.
So for everyone listening, I hope you all listened to enjoyed that as much as I did. So for everyone listening, Meghan, or if anyone has any questions or want to have a look at the content that you get that you put out there, or have a look into your pull-up program, where can people find you or get in touch with you?
So probably the easiest location, I mean, Facebook, I'm always there. So Meghan Callaway. I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm Meghan Callaway Fitness. Oh my gosh, I need to check my Instagram handle. Wow, that's really bad. Hang on, am I Meghan Callaway or Meghan Callaway Fitness? 1 second. I'm just Meghan Callaway on Instagram. Sorry about that. So Meghan Callaway on Instagram. My website is meghancallawayfitness.com. And my pull-up website is ultimatepullups.com. Yeah. I lose track. I have so many platforms that I can't remember all my names for all of
them. Whichever, as long as for everyone listening, if you type in Meghan Callaway, absolutely look at the content that she puts out there. For anyone looking to get better at pull-ups, doesn't matter, you know, who you are, you know, depending on level. I know for me, it helped me, and that program has helped me working with my clients as well. So as I said, I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. Thanks a lot, Meghan, for taking the time to chat with me. I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks everyone for listening, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you for having me.